All right. I'd like to call our meeting to order. This is the August 27th Scott County Fiscal Court meeting, and we're meeting today and meeting at the courthouse. And this meeting is hosted from the Scott County Courthouse. It's being broadcast live through the Scott County Fiscal Court YouTube page. Public attendance is not permitted at this meeting due to the contagious nature of COVID-19 and social distance requirement. So with that said, we will get started, and would like to ask everyone to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all. At this time, I'd like to ask Stacy Hamilton to call the roll.
Mr. Hostetler?
Present.
Mr. Lyons?
Here.
Mr. Wallace?
Here.
Mr. Corman?
Present.
Mr. Ellison?
Here.
Mr. Burke?
Here.
Mr. Livingston?
Here.
Mr. Marshall?
Here.
Judge Covington?
Here. In your packet, you received a copy of the previous meeting's minutes. Are there any questions or comments related to those as presented?
Motion to approve.
Motion from Mr. Corman to approve. Is there a second? Second from Mr. Lyons. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Next, we'll consider number 5, the transfers as presented in your packet. Are there any questions or comments related to those transfers as presented?
Motion.
Motion from Mr. Livingston. We got a motion from Mr. Livingston and a second from Mr. Hostetler. Is that good, Mr. Hostetler? Any questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Next, number 6 on your agenda, the bills as presented. Any questions or comments related to those? Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Motion from Mr. Corman.
Second.
Second from Mr. Wallace. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. With that, it leads us next to number 7. We are joined tonight by Patty Burnside, and she's going to present information related to the library board tax rate.
Thank you for having me. Stacy, thank you for getting me on the agenda. You all should have a paper at your place that tells you that the Public Library Board of Trustees adopted the compensating tax rate for the fiscal year 2020-2021. And as some of us were talking about earlier, this is a lower rate than the past year, but the Library Board felt that this was the time, not the time to raise the tax rates beyond what the compensating rate was. Also on your sheet, I wanted to point out to you what the library has been doing during the COVID-19 pandemic. We were closed on March 15th by governor's orders, and then we were allowed to reopen on June the 15th under very strict guidelines that we were pulled out of the county government pool of people, and we were put into a pool for guidelines with aquariums, museums, and distilleries. And so we had to follow many of the same guidelines that they do. So we can only have 50% of our staff working at any one time. We have to quarantine the books that are returned to us following CDC guidelines. They have to stay in quarantine for 3 days, and then we wash the covers of the books and the DVDs with a diluted bleach solution. So we're jumping through a lot of hoops, but we're really, really pleased that we can be back open to the public, even though our hours are not what they were before. We're open Monday through Saturday from 1 to 7 p.m. All of our other services are in place. Our computer lab is open, our fax machine and copy machines are available. We're doing notary service by appointment. So we've tried to reinstitute all the services except for use of our public meeting rooms that we had before. We've also instituted curbside service, so if people don't feel comfortable coming into the library, they can place their books on hold or call us, and we'll pull them for them and set up an appointment time, and they drive to the back entrance, and we run them out to their cars for them. Those folks who are most vulnerable and can't get out at all, or are caring for someone who can't get out, we do porch side delivery now. So we're taking books right to someone's porch, no touch, leave them there and let them know that they're there. So we feel like our staff has really jumped in, and we're doing all of our regular programs, from the toddler story times where bigger plays and books are read aloud, all the way to adult programs virtually. And we've seen a huge increase in the use of our e-resources. So we've beefed up what we can, purchasing more e-books and e-audiobooks, because people are really taking advantage of that this year. Also, you have the latest calendar. You're going to have a sneak peek. It went out in the mail today. This is the typical newsletter that we mail out every month. Now we're doing it every 2 months. But we felt like there were a lot of people that still didn't know that the library was open. We get calls every day to that effect. It's like, are you all open again? So we felt that this was a real important thing to get out. So it's going out in the mail today. We mail over 24,000 of these each month or every other month. So every residence and every business in Scott County gets one. So whether they keep it out of their mailbox and look at it, we don't know. But we do think it's really helpful for everybody to get information. So any questions for me?
What does the traffic look like now? I'm just curious.
We're way down.
Yeah.
We are supposed to be counting people who can come into the building, and our building can only be at 33% capacity at any one time. So we have somebody sitting at the door every moment we're open, but we have never approached that. So our door count is way down. But we're not finding our circulation numbers quite as effective because people are using the other services. So we're delivering to Sadieville and Stamping Ground, to the lockers out there, and picking up at the book drop. So people are still using us, not at the rate they were before, but it's not, it's pretty good. So I think they're finding other ways. We're very anxious to see what happens when school starts, whether more and more people will come in and need, because we've moved all our furniture so that there's only one chair at every study table. And we're very anxious to see whether young folks will need to come in to study, or will they have everything they need at home virtually. So we're going to watch that closely and move furniture again if we need to.
Patty, this question really doesn't have to do with the tax rate, but it has to do with the use of the community building or the meeting room for voting purposes. And that's going to, I believe you put on here October 13th through November 2nd. How is that going to function as far as in terms of, we're limiting how many people can go into the library, but then you're getting ready to open it up to people getting ready to come in and vote.
We are relying on the court, the county clerk to take care of that. It's her, we're allowing our room to be used. They used Ann Mason Elementary when they had early voting for the primary election, but they can't be assured that school won't be back in session during the whole month of October and early November. So they came to us and asked, and our room has a capacity of 200, and we have places for people to socially distance if there's a line. So we have stickers on the floor, and we can have a way. So we're assuming, and we're going to work closely with them to make sure that all the social distancing guidelines are followed. They feel like it won't be a problem because the early voting is such a long period of time this time. So we're hopeful that it'll all work out.
The numbers really trickled in. One person. I don't know that I ever saw 2 people.
Okay.
At the
So
same
it
time.
wasn't
Like
an
2 or
influx of
3 people.
I got you.
Just
Right.
randomly people
Will
by there.
they use that side entrance
Yes, they will
only?
only use that one entrance. The new gallery entrance will be dedicated for them, and we're going to work with them closely to get signed. They've been out to visit the site, and we provided them with a couple of rooms. There's some things they have to secure every night, so we are providing that for him, but for them. But we thought it was just a real important service for us to offer, since the schools, it's very uncertain whether they'll be able to use the schools again. So that was important.
I think it's a great collaborative effort.
Yeah, I think
and
so too. And they're
nice.
very conscientious about what they're going to do, so asking really good questions.
They did a great job.
Yeah.
I would ask one question related to the tax rate. Can you recall how many years, have you all consistently taken the compensating rate?
We have, and it goes down every year a little bit. This year, the board asked me to figure, when they figure the compensating rate, they give you a figure of what they think that the money will be generated. And we figured last year it generated about 95% of what they said we would get. The year before, I think it was 93% of what they said the compensating rate would generate. This year, just because of the unusual times, I think that was the reason that the board decided to take the compensating rate this year.
Okay, thank you.
Can you answer one question?
Uh-huh.
What is your all's, how much money do you all have in the bank? Like, what's your balance?
Well, we're required by our statutes and by our guidelines from KDLA to have 6 months reserve of operating money. So that's probably $1.5 million that we would have in the bank just for that purpose. I think beyond that, there's about $4 million that they're planning to do yet another addition to the library to provide more meeting rooms for the public. So we're already talking to architects about that, although nothing's been decided for sure. Our meeting rooms prior to the pandemic were heavily used. Everyone from Girl Scouts to hospice training took place in our meeting rooms because they were free and they were open till 9 o'clock at night. We were having to turn people away. So we have a real need for more public meeting room space. So there's a plan in place to use that money that we've saved each year by being very careful stewards. I mean, we've never spent all of our budget. And so we roll over, a good portion of money each year. And so we were able to save and never have to do bonds for any building project that we do. So
Right. But you got about a balance about $5.5 million at this point.
probably, yeah.
With that, and I'm not, you all are in the library world, and I'm not trying to get involved, but I guess my question would be is if there's need for meeting rooms and that type of thing, have you all, as a board, considered going to a different location besides the
Building a
show-off
branch,
location?
yeah.
Yeah.
They have considered building a branch. All the guidelines have us, we've been working really closely with planning and zoning, and they've done the 5-mile radius
Right.
for us, and there's not a lot of population outside that 5-mile radius and of our current location. And of course, you could build the building, but that's not the ongoing cost. The ongoing cost is to staff the building and insure it and take care of the landscaping. As you know, we would have the money to build something, but not to maintain it,
Right.
and keeping the tax rate low. So that's but the board did talk about that going forward in the next few years. Do we need to build a branch? And the consensus was not yet. We're just not there yet for that.
Can I ask
Mr.
one
Livingston?
question?
Uh-huh.
Is the current location paid off?
Oh, yes, we
Okay,
never
okay.
borrowed any money.
I knew the expansion was paid for, but I
Yeah.
wasn't sure about
No,
the
the
rest of the
current
building. I
location
wasn't sure if it was
as well.
bonded or not. Okay, that's fantastic.
If there's no other questions, Patty, thank you so much.
Thank you for all that you guys are doing. Great job.
Could you say that again really loud?
Great job.
Thank you.
They said about the same thing about motor vehicles. Patty, thanks again.
You're welcome.
So the next item on our agenda is just, we want the record to reflect that the Extension Board tax rates were presented. The Scott County Extension Board submitted the following tax rates for 2020. Real property, 0.0177, and then personal property, 0.0309. And these are the compensating rates.
Judge, do we have to vote? I know in the past we had voted to put these rates on our tax bill, not to vote to approve the rates, per se.
I think we probably do need to on both of those.
We did not. He recommended that we did not have to for the health department.
Yeah, the law changed. If you don't vote, it automatically goes into effect.
Okay.
Or you can vote to say yes or no.
Okay, okay.
Is there a pleasure?
Well, yeah, I guess if we're in dissension, then I would probably call for a vote, but I'm not in dissension.
No, I was just asking.
You are on the board, correct?
Yes.
Okay. We just have to have a representative.
Yes. Next, number 9, let the record reflect that salary schedule was presented to the court and has been presented. There's really nothing else to that. Any questions about that? Next, number 10, tax rate 2020 property tax. And I felt like it was appropriate to invite Mr. Jenkins to come and just talk a little bit about the work he's done. And, you know, it had to be certified before we moved to this point. And Tim is always a very valuable asset to, you know, go over and talk about different items related to property tax rates and then the assessment as well. And he's an asset to Michelle and I and the court as well. So just wanted to invite Tim to address the court, and then if there are any questions, and then we can get into the discussion of the actual rate and options we have.
Thank you. It's nice to be here. I always enjoy talking with you all and helping you if you have questions and stuff. Alvin's been down to the office. Chad's been down many times. Kelly and I have talked. I know David, we've talked. Mr. Ellison, you and I haven't talked yet, but I'm sure we will at some point. And then Rick has been in the office several times, and Mr. Burke used to be my magistrate, so I know everybody. I'm always comfortable talking with you, and I'm always happy to help if you ever have a question about anything. Joe asked me to come over and just hit 3 or 4 points on the assessment and on properties in Scott County, and just want to give you a few facts that you probably already know some of them, but you know, we've got 285 square miles, give or take, in Scott County. This year we have 23,694 parcels of real estate inside that 285 miles. We grew by 300 parcels this year. That's new lots that came on board basically through platting. 18,439 residential tracts, 3,429 farm tracts, 939 commercial tracts, and 887 exempt tracts. 2020 value increases, we had 14,191 parcels saw an increase, 713 saw a decrease, and 8,790 of them had no change whatsoever. The median assessment grew by 6% to $176,500. And all of that is due to what has been going on in the market. Every year we go through an assessment process where at the end of the year we take all the deeds that have sold in a given year, and then we do a market study in each area of Scott County, every neighborhood. Livingston lives in Bradford Place. We run a special study just for Bradford Place. We run a study in I've got about 170 what I call competitive areas in Scott County that I run sales comparisons for. I take the deed prices or the market prices and I break them down, and then I compare them to the assessments. And if the assessments aren't within about a range, then I will ride them up a little bit. So our 18 median sales value, going back just comparing year end of 19, which became our 20 comparables, versus year end of 18. Our sales value in 18, the median was $204,000. It jumped to $214,500 at the end of 19, a growth of 5%. The So that's where we were. So we had a 5% median increase, and as I said, the assessment grew by 6%, the median. And I'm going to get down to how that all affects what I've reported to Joe Patton, to the state. But people ask about the COVID effect. Well, I assessed on January 1st. I don't know about you, but I didn't know how to spell COVID or pandemic. I still can't spell pandemic. But I think next year I will be able to on the first of the year. But the first, very interesting question, very good question. What is the effect of COVID on the current assessment? Well, the answer on the current assessment is there is none. Okay? The answer for 2021 will be the COVID effect will be reflected in the January 1st of 2021 assessments. And as we go along through the year, as I was heading into the assessment period, right, COVID struck March the 15th. I was basically done assessing at that point in time, but I was very concerned about moving into the inspection period when I send out the notices, and I'm going to get the phone calls from people saying, well, what's going on? Well, so what I did, I took the first quarter, just for general information, I took the first quarter, first 3 months of 2020, took the median sale from 2020, compared it to the first 3 months of 19. And I found that the median sale for the first 3 months of the year was $215,500. Remember, our year end was $214,500. I took the second quarter of 2020, and the year-to-date median through that was $225,000 versus $214,500. So then I thought, well, I'm going to break it down and just take the 3 months, because COVID basically hit us in the middle of March. So I'm going to throw out January, February, and March, and I'm going to compare April, May, and June of 20 to April, May, and June of 19. And the 2019 pre-COVID median was $215,000, which is right in line with what I just mentioned. The second quarter of 2020, which is the in-COVID median, is $232,000. It's up 7.9%. If you'd asked me on March the 12th, when the NBA suspended the rest of the season, where we were going to be in the second quarter of the year, I would have never predicted we were going to be up 7.9%. So we're very strong. Since 2015, the median value of a single-family home in Scott County has increased 30%, from about $165,000 to $214,500 through January 1 of 2020. That's about 6% per year average. I'll tell you all that to tell you all of this. Also, I've got July numbers. I'll just tell you what July has done. The median sale price for July of 19 was $196,000. And this is blowing my mind, but the median price for July of 20 is right at $231,000. A lot of new construction weighing in on that. The median sale price year to date is $226,000. So again, I tell you all that to tell you this. So what did that do to the assessment this year? Well, we increased this year, and just another point I always like to tell everybody, 1985, the value of all the real estate, the taxable value of all the real estate in Scott County was about $300 million, okay, in 1985. This year, our assessment grew $288 million in 1 year. And I've told you that before, you've heard those numbers before, but the assessment overall grew by 6.18%, the total of $288,716,818. We're currently at $4,959,355,434. That's up $288 million from last year. Of that difference, $142 million of that, or 3.04% of the difference, is new growth, new houses that were added to the assessment, and $146 million of that is residential reassessment. It's the existing properties that were there last year that are still there that we just revalued because of deeds or because of reassessment. Again, the overall assessment's grown about 30% since 2015. It grew 6.18% last year. The median was up 6%. We've averaged about 6% a year since 2015.
Tim, something you shared with me was that since 2015, our value had gone up like 31.6%, However, our revenue had only gone up about 19%.
Right, about 20. That's, if you take the compensating rate, you basically are gonna lose ground. Your value, the property tax is an ad valorem tax. It's according to value. So if your value increases by 6.18% a year, and you vote for a rate that produces less than that every year, you're losing ground. So there's an income gap that you start to have that maybe isn't a whole lot each year, but over time, your revenue will grow like this, where if you had taken a 4% rate, a higher rate, the legal 4% rate, or something greater than the compensating rate, your revenue would have grown at a steeper rate, would have kept up with the value. You know, and it's just pure math. But
Really appreciate the work and effort that goes into putting all that data together. I know some of our court members might have some questions for you.
Yeah.
Does anybody have any questions or comments?
I've got a question probably for Michelle, but Tim can also answer it. So if we take the compensating rate versus what the existing rate is now, what would be the difference in dollars, in terms of dollars?
Approximately 50,000.
Okay, so 50,000.
To the county revenue plus.
yeah, I think your compensating rate's 0.61.
Yes.
And your 0.62 is almost your 4% rate, yeah.
But Tim, what would be the difference if we look, just take the actual rate versus the compensate rate on a parcel of property that, you know, versus $100,000? What's the dollar figure for that personal, for Chad Wallace, who has a $100,000 home, okay, and the difference in rates, what's going to be the difference to me?
0.62 versus 0.61?
Yeah.
$1 $100,000.
$1 $100,000.
Yeah.
Okay, so then my rate, my tax bill will go up $1, and if the assessment was the same.
Yes.
Yeah.
What other questions or comments does anyone else
I
have?
want to make a comment. Tim does a great job on his website. I don't know if you all use his website. I get on it probably 2 or 3 times every day. Great information. You guys keep it up. If you ever look at other counties, some of them give a little bit of information, and others make you pay to be a member. All of your stuff is free, and it's linked up to the maps. And it's very helpful.
Yeah.
It's a great job.
Thank
Would you like to go on record of who that other county is you don't like?
There's about 50 of them.
Well, I was an appraiser before it was PBA, and I worked in some of those other counties, and they did not treat you very well in those offices. And that's kind of one of my pet peeves, or one of my promises to the public, is that I would never treat an appraiser. I want to take care of the real estate professional. And if I can meet the needs of the real estate professional, then I should exceed the needs of John Q. Public. So that's what we try to do. There's some things, the way the state budgeting works, if I build for my website, the state typically takes about 70% of whatever I take in that I have left over, and they're going to take 70% of it. But there's nothing that says I have to build for my website. So rather than bill and send that money to Frankfurt, I chose not to bill and give the benefit to the citizens of Scott County and the people that they want to look best in Scott County. So that's kind of
That's great. So
thank you. Thank you all.
Hey, Tim, thanks so much.
Yeah, and the other thing too is when we come around to this every year, I get myself so confused on talking about compensating rate, 4%, holding the rate, all this stuff. And so I remain that way sometimes until you come up and go through everything all over again. So I appreciate the knowledge and
You're welcome.
the explanation.
At any time, fellas, I love talking about it, and, Michelle came in last year, came over and talked to me about some things, picked up on it, I'm always available to you. Thank you. Appreciate it.
So what the court has to consider today is which direction you'd like to go. If the court wants to consider taking the compensating rate of 0.061 then the court can have a, a motion and a second, and we can vote on it, and if it passes, then there's nothing else that needs to be done. If the court elects to consider anything else, what we are required to do is to schedule and advertise a tax hearing, and then allow for public comment, and then come back and consider what direction you want to go. So that's really what's laid out in front of us. If you look historically back over, we look back to 2015. In 2015, our rate was .067, in 16.066, in 17.065, and 18.063, 19, of course, now .062. And I did a little bit of research just to share with the court. From my research, there are 5 counties in the state of Kentucky that have a lower rate than we do. Of those 5 counties, there are 2 counties that have a cumulative taxing jurisdiction rate that is lower than us. So we're the 3rd lowest in the state of Kentucky. And, I think we're doing a great job providing services to our county and using those dollars as a good steward of those dollars and spending them wisely. Things that come across my mind and I think about is, how much lower is this rate going to go? And where, and then the other items that Michelle and I have discussed is, we've seen here in July and August, the net profit revenues, we've gotten a little spike because that filing deadline was pushed back. But my concern is this time next spring, in May, my concern is that might just completely tank out. We just don't know where the bottom is. And, just wanting to, protect our community and protect our individual taxpayer and respect our individual taxpayer, but at the same time, try to look down the road and make sure that we're not putting ourselves or future courts into a situation where revenue is a big issue. And if we're talking about comparing 061 to 062, we're talking about $1 per $100,000 of value on a home. So with that said, I've talked a lot. I'd like to, gather your thoughts and value your input.
Judge, I think every time I've been here, I've been all in favor of taking the lower rate whenever possible. But this one time I'm going to change and recommend that we stay at the same rate. But in the last 5 years, we've got our record book by far and have, we dropped the rate almost 10%. At some point in the future, the economic downturn is going to force those assessments to go down, which I thought this COVID would do, but it looks like they're not going to. But sometime it's going to happen. When it does, the compensating rate is going to be higher. But if we hold the line now, possibly in the future, when that higher compensating rate comes on, then we can hold the rate again. So that's the reason. And it is, that's the median sale value, you get $230,000, $2.30 is what the property owners will come.
$2.30 on that median sale value.
I was talking to the judge earlier today about this, and something that he sent over to me was the tax rate from 2000. And in 2000, it was 72. So it's actually a lot less than it was 20 years ago. And my concern about all of this, and I voiced concern about not holding the rate last year, but all the work that the judge and Michelle and Jeff Mudrack have put in with regards to getting our employees to where they are in a fairly compensated, competitive marketplace through the survey. The one thing that we can't do and we don't want to happen is to get behind again. And I think that right now, if you follow everything that's happening with other public entities, salaries are beginning to spike a little bit because people are hard to find. The and it's hard to find people that want to do those jobs. And I think if we don't hold the rate, we are going to get in a situation that we're going to lose that compounded revenue over the next however many years, and we're going to end up giving increases down the road to employees, health insurance increases. I think retirement will increase 12% again this year, because I think it was supposed to be 12% over a 7 or 8 year period is what they did a couple years ago. So that's another 12% that we're going to have to pay for the employees, and then not to mention the capital projects. So I'm in favor with Alvin of holding the rate this year.
One other point that I meant to mention, I forgot to, while the property taxes are less than 10% of our total budget, that's the one line where we're making budget projections. We kind of know what it's going to be. Those others are guesses in the dark, but this one kind of rely on.
No, there's consistency in this, and definitely the others are they're subject to volatility. Bill Burke would like to make a comment.
Got a microphone turned on here. Judge, we've been kicking this can down the road for 5 years, and I've been a magistrate. We've taken the compensating rate every year for 5 years. And every year for 5 years, our expenses have gone up. And if we don't do something pretty quick, we're going to find ourselves on the front page of the local newspaper, like our friends across the street. I'm not in favor of taking the compensating rate.
Okay, Bill,
That's where we need to go.
Yep.
It may be a small bump, it may be a moderate bump, but I'm not in favor of taking the compensating rate again and digging this hole that we would be. I just don't think we should do that.
anyone else?
It's not a popular thing to hear, it's not what my constituents want to hear, it's reality.
But at the same time, I do think that we're being respectful because we're holding the rate and not having it change. That's, I think a strong consideration. Anyone else have any comments or questions?
I would agree to hold the rate. Ultimately, I want to make sure we're providing the services that we say we're going to provide to the people that need it. So over time, that gets more and more expensive. We've got to hold the line and make sure our revenue is meeting that. Again, I keep thinking about all the other cities and whatever that never do it because of political pressure to not do it, to keep it at a certain rate. And they're behind, struggling to find manpower, struggling to meet the needs of their constituents. So we've got to hold the line.
Rick Hostetler, did you want to make a comment, Mr. Hostetler?
Yeah, Judge, I'm still in favor of the compensating rate. I think to put it in a nutshell, when I look at it, I've had friends in the past who've had their properties paid for, and other things come along, and couldn't pay their property taxes, and lose their property over time because it didn't sold on the courthouse steps, and they already had the property paid for. Now, I realize this is not a lot of money. I think Michelle or Mr. Jenkins said 50,000 difference. Am I correct on that?
Yes.
Stay it.
If we hold the rate at its current level, .062, it would be approximately $50,000.
I think of the old proverb, the straw that broke the camel's back. And I've had several discussions in recent weeks about this very item with some of my constituents. So I'm in favor of compensating.
Caveat here. There's an old saying when it comes to doing stuff like this, that if you want, if you're in the forces and you're raising horses, if you want nice fresh oats and you want horses to run strong and run well, you must be prepared to pay a fair price. If you want to buy oats for your horse that have already been through the horse, they come a lot cheaper.
The thing that comes to my mind, thanks, Bill. The thing that comes to my mind, and that's a hard one to follow.
What does come to your mind?
Is the position of our rate, and it just making sure that we can provide services has to be a major, thought process. And what Alvin shared as well, this is a consistent, we know, we can predict this. The others are question marks to me. And if we hold the rate and do not change the rate, that our constituents are going to see a very, very, very minimal change. On the county level, it's $50,000. But, I just think that, we have to look at that.
That's for perpetuity.
Correct.
Yeah, not just for this year. That's-
Well,
yeah.
you are correct, sir. Yes, sir. So, Rand, you guide me. If we want to, if someone wants to make a motion to schedule a tax hearing, that's the proper next step. Would you?
Well, I guess the next step would be the court voting on which rate they're gonna take. And then depending on what that is, I guess, we go
Okay.
from there, I think.
So we would take a vote on the rate and then schedule the tax hearing.
Can I say one more thing?
Yes, sir.
The other thing too is when you talk about that increase, it's not an increase from an increased tax rate. It's an increase from your property values going up. And it's no different than if you make more money at your job this year, you will have paid more taxes. The tax rate may not have changed, but you've made more money. And so the fact that our property values are skyrocketing, which we can't control that's not, of our doing, that's what's causing that. And so.
But that's a blessing as well.
It is.
If you're not in one of those sections that Tim had reassessed this year, you say no change.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
Tim, do you have any data on how many would see a change?
Well, it would be,
I think there were 700 and something.
It was a big number that was not reassessed.
There were about 14,000 saw an increase. And then there were, and the difference, it was 23,000, 14,000 saw an increase. And the difference stayed the same or went down a little bit.
About 8,000 to 9,000.
Yeah.
Parcels.
Yeah, about 8,000 stayed the same, about 900 went down, and 14,000 saw an increase.
Okay.
Which, again, that's a few more than normally would see an increase, but the market is very strong, it's been strong for years. So it's-
But on $100,000 of value, it's a $1 increase.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
$1 change.
$1 change.
0.2.
Yes.
But if you didn't get reassessed, it's gonna change.
Yeah.
Right, that's right. So 8,000 people would see no difference.
And I want to stress again, we're not changing the rate, we're holding the rate if we elect to go that way. If we take the compensating rate, it would change from .062 to .061. What, Alvin?
I make a motion that we keep the rate the same, .062.
Second.
We have a second, we have a first, and we have a second. Any other questions or comments? I think we need a roll call vote.
Well, you don't have to, but we certainly could, just to, because it sounds like there's some disagreement. Might make it clear if we do a roll call.
Would you do a roll call, please?
So after the, motion, and I'll run the ad for the public hearing, do we just confirm in the next meeting that it?
I'll be honest with you, I should have looked this beforehand, I hadn't, so I don't know the answer to that, Stacy. I can tell you tomorrow, but I'll have to look at the statute.
Okay.
Well, I think before we could have a public hearing, the court would have to say we're gonna hold the rate.
By vote.
Yeah, because otherwise, there's nothing to advertise because the court hasn't taken action.
Okay.
I believe that's right.
And
So-
then at the public hearing, you could either not vote to change or
No, we'll have to vote again.
you have to vote.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, by the court's consideration, if the court votes to hold the rate, we will schedule the tax hearing the tax hearing. We will listen to public comment, and then we'll hold another vote. Does that make sense? And I think that's, so we've had a first and we've had a second. And then we'll do a roll call vote.
Mr. Hostetler?
No.
Mr. Lyons?
Yes.
Mr. Wallace?
Yes.
Mr. Corman?
Yes.
Mr. Ellison?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
If I vote no, what am I voting no on?
Keeping the rate the same.
A yes vote is to hold the rate. A yes vote is to hold the rate and not change it. A no vote would be to move in the compensating rate direction.
Throw it back open.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
throws it back
That means
over.
they come back with motion to do more.
Yeah.
Right.
Don't you like interruption?
Well,
You could abstain.
I think I'll abstain.
all right.
Mr. Livingston?
Yes.
Judge Covington?
Yes. So let the record reflect that we will schedule a hearing, and it will be the first item, well, it'll be before our next meeting. We'll take public comment on that, and then we'll come back and hold a second vote to set the rate.
I guess you'll have to figure out how you're going to do public comment through COVID.
We'll advertise and take emails and,
For the LGEA, it's written, and I put the address.
okay. But, you
I'll look at
know,
one of those and kind of mock it.
yeah, I want to go back and stress.
I would change the vote if I could.
Bill, would you like to
I would change that to vote yes. I'll agree with you.
okay. I don't think,
I don't know that we can.
You can vote yes next time,
Yeah, there you go.
or however you would like to next time.
but Bill, I think Rand recommends we've got to hold it as abstain.
I'm good with that.
All right,
I made my bed, I'll amend it.
all right. So are there any other questions? I think I've laid it out. Appreciate your time and thoughtfulness. With that said, the next item is tax rate 2021 motor vehicle watercraft.
I sent this to everyone.
So you had this in your packet, and the tax rate for 2020 was 16.6 cents per $100 assessed value. I don't believe there's any desire in conversations and thought process of mine to change that at all. Is there any comment or question in regards to that matter, and is there a motion in consideration of that rate?
So moved.
So moved to keep it at 16.6. We have a motion, is there a second?
Second.
A second from Mr. Corman. Any other questions or comments?
Judge, I'm sorry, I wasn't able to hear you that well.
We've got a motion and a second to keep the tax rate for motor vehicles and watercraft at 16.6 cents per 100 assessed value. So we have a motion and we have a second to keep it at the same rate.
Judge, I'll say this, I've been voting on this since 2000. I don't think that it's been the same rate since 2000.
Has it been 16.6 since
Yeah,
2000?
I hate to go out on a limb here, but I believe it hasn't changed in 20 years.
So, Rick, did that answer your question?
Yes, sir. Yes,
So,
sir.
so we have a motion and a second. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor of keeping it at 16.6, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. At this time, we're going to move to number 12, Resolution 20-16, Workforce Development Area. I'm going to ask Rand to read this, please.
Resolution number 20-16, a resolution approving an interlocal cooperative agreement for the promotion of workforce development. Whereas the Scott County Fiscal Court has previously approved an interlocal cooperative agreement for the promotion of workforce development, and whereas said agreement has expired, and whereas the Scott County Fiscal Court finds that the participation of the county in a new interlocal cooperative agreement is in the best interest of the citizens of Scott County as well as the region. Now therefore, it is hereby resolved by the Scott County Fiscal Court as follows. 1, Scott County Fiscal Court hereby approves and agrees to be a party to an interlocal agreement among the Kentucky counties of Anderson, Bourbon, Bull, Clark, Estill, Franklin, Garrett, Harrison, Jessamine, Lexington, Fayette, Lincoln, Madison, Mercer, Nicholas, Powell, Scott, and Woodford to increase the effectiveness of the area's workforce development. 2, Judge Covington is hereby authorized to execute said agreement on behalf of the Scott County Fiscal Court.
Any questions or comments? I would recommend the court's approval of this resolution. It does a lot of positive things for our community.
Judge, did you say that's a renewal?
Yes, sir. Is there a motion to approve this resolution? Motion from Mr. Lyons, a second one from Mr. Ellison. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Number 13, Ordinance 20-05, second reading, budget amendment. I'd like to ask Rand Marshall to share that information with the court.
Ordinance 20-05, an ordinance relating to the annual budget and amendment thereof. Whereas Scott County, Kentucky has realized unbudgeted receipts, be it ordained by Scott County of the Commonwealth of Kentucky. Section 1, current fiscal year 2020 through 2021. The budget for the current fiscal year is amended to increase or decrease the receipts of the following funds to include unbudgeted receipts from A, revenues, federal funds, $1,940,769, LGEA, $53,000, McCracken, $10, federal funds, cash transfer out to other funds, $1,940,000, general cash transfer in from other funds, $1,940,000. Total amended revenues, $1,993,779. Appropriations, LGEA, road materials, maintenance, $53,000, federal funds, miscellaneous, $769, McCracken miscellaneous, $10, general reserve for transfer, $1,940,000. Total amended expenditures, $1,993,779. Section 2, the amounts adjusting the receipt and expenditure accounts in Section 1 are for governmental purposes.
Any questions or comments on that second reading?
It was approved by DLG this week.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve that second reading? So moved by Mr. Wallace. Is there a second? A second by Mr. Livingston. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Next, we'll ask Mr. Marshall to read the second reading of Ordinance 20-04, an ordinance related to the home incarceration program.
Ordinance number 20-04, ordinance establishing a home incarceration program for the Scott County Detention Center. Whereas persistent overcrowding has become a problem for the Scott County Detention Center, whereas it would be beneficial for both the detention center and its inmates to establish a home incarceration program that would remove inmates from the detention center but still provide a monitored environment for them. And whereas KRS 67.372 authorizes the fiscal court to create a home incarceration program by ordinance, and whereas the Scott County Fiscal Court has determined that creating a home incarceration program is in the best interest of the citizens of Scott County, now therefore it is ordained by the Scott County Fiscal Court as follows. Section 1, an home incarceration program is hereby created pursuant to KRS 61.372. As required by said statute, the Scott County Detention Center is the agency designated to monitor the home incarceration program.
Section 2, the county shall enter into a contract with an appropriate entity to operate the home incarceration program. Said contract shall be reviewed at least annually. Section 3, the county shall pay the expense of the operation of the HIP for qualified inmates, which shall be designated as a line item on the Scott County Detention Center budget. The Scott County Detention Center is also hereby designated as the agency to operate the HIP on a continuous basis, 24 hours per day and 7 days per week. This shall be in conjunction with a third-party contractor who should carry out the day-to-day operations of the HIP. The Scott County Detention Center is authorized to formulate the policies and procedures necessary to operate the program as provided by the Kentucky Revised Statutes and this ordinance. Section 4, pursuant to KRS 67372 sub 2, the fiscal court designates the Scott County Sheriff's Office as a law enforcement agency to assist a petitioner, victim, or witness when a person ordered to wear a monitoring device violates the provisions of the court's order and is in need of assistance. Section 5, participants in the HIP shall be limited to the following persons. Number 1, persons not charged with any violent or sexual offense. Violent as used in this order shall mean a crime in which physical injury was inflicted or threatened. 2, persons not charged with violating an emergency protective order or domestic violence order. Section 3, persons who are not convicted nor charged with being a persistent felony offender. Number 4, persons not charged with failure to appear or having 2 or more failure to appear convictions in the last 2 years immediately preceding the current charge. Number 5, persons not having a similar charge within 2 years immediately preceding the current charge. Number 6, persons not charged with a felony drug trafficking offense. Number 7, persons not charged with escape nor convicted of escape. Number 8, persons who have not previously violated an HIP order in this or any other state. Section 6, participants must have a home to live in located in Kentucky. The participant must not have a current no trespass order with respect to said home. Additionally, no victim of the pending crime may reside either full or part-time in the same home. Section 7, participants in the HIP shall reimburse the county for the cost of participating in the HIP according to their ability to do so, as determined by the presiding judge. Said reimbursement may be in full, on a sliding scale, or nothing. However, persons with private counsel or who are not indigent are not eligible to have the county pay for their home incarceration. First reading was August 24th. Second reading approved tonight, assuming you do August 27th.
August 14th.
Yeah, for the first one. Yeah, what, did I say something else? Okay. Thank you.
Are there any questions or comments related to that second reading of the ordinance? Is there a motion to accept? Motion from Mr. Corman. Is there a second? A second from Mr. Ellison. Any other question or comment? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Judge, I would just like to say to Jailer Broyles that I appreciate you opening the jail back up. You're open for business, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And
The whole business is real good.
business is real good, is that right?
It is unfortunate.
Jailer Broyles, would you like to update the court or anything? You shared with me today a little, I'd checked on you all and just wanted to, check on you, make sure, because I know it's been a tough, challenging time, to say the least.
Yeah, it has been, and I appreciate you reaching out to me today, Judge, and checking on us. It's been 4 weeks since I closed the jail. The purpose of closing the jail was we didn't know how rampant it was going to be throughout the jail. We didn't really have a grasp as far as what cells were going to be infected. I personally didn't feel good introducing new arrestees off the street into an environment that could potentially expose them. We could set up an arrangement with Bourbon and Woodford County, which is what we did, to house our inmates for a short period of time while we got a grasp on this, or at least tried to get a grasp on this. We started out with one cell infected, then a second cell, then a third cell, and I really clamped down on the facility. And so for the last few weeks, we had one staff member that tested positive, and she tested positive with our initial round of testing. She's over the worst of it, but she's still showing symptoms. This is 4 weeks later. The inmates that we tested in the first week, some of them are still showing symptoms. And we went the 14-day period that the health department recommends. We went 16, 17 days, retested the staff, all of the staff, and retested the one symptomatic, the one, not symptomatic, but the one staff member that has it, and retested the inmates. And the staff member that had it was still showing positive. The inmates that had been tested and tested positive, they were still showing positive. So we waited another week, retested all of them again, and they're all still positive. And so in my conversations with the health department, Crystal Miller has been great throughout this process, but quite honestly, I personally don't think the CDC or the health department, unfortunately, has a full grasp on what exactly is going on with this virus. So Dr. Miller told me about a week and a half ago that now they believe that you can test positive for up to 2 months, not just 14 days, and they don't know how long you're contagious with it. So she told me that last week, and in the same week, we had 2 additional inmates test positive. They started showing symptoms. We tested them. These are inmates that have been locked down, and nobody's been around them. They haven't been around anybody else. And so anyway, after 23, 24, 25 days locked down, all of a sudden they're showing symptoms. It's just, so with that, and with really, I think, giving it our best effort to keep it out of there and then try to contain it the best that we can contain it, my feeling was, after talking to Dr. Miller, you know what, this is just something we're going to have to live with. We will, and I did. I spent last week changing our policies that we had put into place, changing some of them, adding some new policies, and deleting some policies to change how we do things down here to best take care of the inmates that are in our care and custody, and to best take care of the staff and keep them safe. And so we've changed some new policies. We are testing arrestees when they come into the facility immediately. I know you know this, and I know you get tired of hearing this. Dr. Miller wanted us to quarantine for 14 days and then 6 days, and we couldn't do either one because of our space, unfortunately. So we're going to quarantine for 4 days, and what we're doing is we're testing the arrestees when they come into the facility within 12 hours. They get a first test. The next 3 days that after the first day, we're waiting for those test results to come back. And Dr. Miller has assured me that those test results will be back within 3 days. Depending on that test result, depending on how that inmate is doing, whether they're showing any symptoms or not, we'll decide, hey, you're going into general population, or you're going into a cell that has other COVID positive individuals. So we put a lot of new things into place. We opened back up this week. It is a financial burden to the county to be utilizing these other counties. I do appreciate the Bourbon County jailer. I appreciate the Woodford County jailer helping us out during this time. But it's a financial burden, and you know, it's a logistical burden on the sheriff's office and police department. They're having to travel to these other counties with these individuals that they arrest also.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say, is every time we have to take an inmate to someplace else, then we got deputies that are not, you know, doing.
Not here.
Not here in Scott County.
Not patrolling our streets, absolutely. So instead of a 10-minute ride, 15, 20-minute ride down to our facility, they're out of pocket for an hour, or God forbid, they get refused, have a refusal where that jail doesn't feel like they can take that arrestee, then they're out of pocket for who knows how long. So yeah, so we are back open. I'm glad to be back open, and appreciate you checking on us.
No.
And I will say, we did have a second staff member come down positive with the virus. He's a part-time staff member. He's doing okay. He's gotten over the worst of it. I feel lucky that we've only had 2 staff members, quite honestly, come down with it.
Yeah, well, me too. So
Thank
thank
you
you
for
for your, yes, sir. Thank you. And I wanted to mention one other thing related to the home incarceration program. I had a phone conversation with Kyle Thompson of CCA, and you just let him know. He emailed asking about the ordinance, and you know, the ordinance does not impact them at all, our contract, and I just like to go on the record and say that very happy with CCA. And the one thing that we've talked about, Rand and Jelly Royals, and in Kyle as well, is that we might possibly amend our contract with CCA just to spell out specifically that if someone violates the terms of the home incarceration program that CCA knows that their point of contact is now to go straight to the jailers, the detention center staff that's designated by the jailer. So Kyle said that we could get with him and just, he'd be happy to amend it. And I just wanted to let the court know that that's probably going to come up. We'll have to approve that amendment, but it's just to lay that out. With that said, let's move on. Ordinance 20-06, second reading, license tax. It's a whole mouthful.
Ordinance number 20-06, an ordinance amending ordinance number 04-05 for the collection of occupational license taxes. Whereas the Scott Fiscal Court has previously adopted an ordinance providing for the collection of occupational taxes, and whereas it has become necessary to amend said ordinance to provide for consistency with the current Internal Revenue Code and to provide for an appeals process, now therefore be it ordained by the Scott County Fiscal Court as follows. Section 1, a new article, Article 23, entitled Appeals, shall be added to the existing ordinance providing for the collection of occupational license taxes. The text of the Article 23 amendment is as follows. Appeals. Number 1, a licensee shall have the right to appeal eligible decisions of the Revenue Commission within 30 days by A, sending a written notice, including sufficient documentation to support the appeal to the director of the commission, or B, submitting a written request for a meeting with the director of the commission to explain his or her appeal and present evidence. C, after reviewing documentation and or hearing the licensee, the director of the commission shall in writing affirm, modify, or withdraw the decision. Section 2, a licensee shall have the right to appeal a decision of the director made under subsection 1 of this section within 30 days by submitting a written request for a meeting with the Board of Commissioners to explain his or her appeal and present evidence. After reviewing documentation and or hearing the licensee, the Board of Commissioners shall, in writing, affirm, modify, or reverse the assessment, but modification or reversal may be made only upon a showing that the director's decision was not supported by substantial evidence on the record. Number 3, eligible decisions subject to appeal under this section shall be limited to A, audit findings or an additional assessment under KRS 67775, B, apportionment factor used for calculating tax liability, C, questions as to nexus in the jurisdiction, D, other factors related to the assessment or calculation of tax liability. 4, an appeal shall serve to stay the collections process, during which time the Commission shall not take any adverse actions against the taxpayer or commence civil litigation. After the appeals process is final, this stay shall immediately expire. Section 2, the definition of Internal Revenue Code as set out in Article 1, subsection 9 is hereby deleted in full and replaced with the following definition. Number 9, Internal Revenue Code means the Internal Revenue Code in effect on December 31st of the year in which the tax is due, exclusive of any amendments made subsequent to that date, other than amendments that extend provisions in effect on December 31st of the year in which the tax is due that would otherwise terminate. Section 3, this ordinance shall become effective upon its passage and publication as required by law. First reading August 14th, approved tonight, assuming you do August 27th.
Any questions or comments related to that reading? Is there a motion to accept as presented?
Motion.
Motion from Mr. Hostetler. Is there a second? Second from Mr. Lyons. Any other question or comment? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. With that said, I'm going to ask Jeff Mudrack to address the court, and then I'm going to ask Rand Marshall to make any comment about county attorney new hire.
Thank you, Judge, Magistrates. On Rand Marshall's behalf, I am pleased to recommend Kristen Hall for the administrative assistant position. As you saw in the information I shared with you, we had over 100 applicants for this position and interviewed several, and it was determined that Kristen was the best person for the position. She has 13 years of related work experience and includes 7 of those working in law offices. So unless you have any questions, I'm bringing forward the recommendation for Kristen Hall. And I guess I should also say her tentative start date is September the 7th and the pay rate $16 an hour.
Okay.
Should I note in the minutes anything to do with the Commonwealth Attorney?
If I can just address that, maybe, Stace. As you all may recall, Sharon Muse came in front of us and asked for funding from the court for 2 positions, and we really couldn't afford to do that, I don't think. But we had a spot that we had not filled, Joanne Sinkhorn. So I mentioned that we'd not hired somebody, we kind of divide those responsibilities up between other people. So this will be under our budget. This person will work almost exclusively for the Commonwealth Attorney. They will have just a little bit to do with our office, mostly taking files after preliminary hearings from our office to the Commonwealth Attorney. But I think, it's going to benefit people in Scott County, so it doesn't matter to me really if it's under our budget. We're all on the same team. That's kind of how this thing came about. I think their office will be in Sharon's office. They will not be in our office, at least, on a continual basis.
I guess my understanding, yes.
But they'll fall under our administrative code, our control of it.
Our benefits, yes.
Yes, sir.
And serve as the liaison, and the work will be, I think, critical to Scott County and the county attorney and the Commonwealth Attorney.
Yeah.
So my question, I don't have a problem with it. If it's an unfilled position that you don't need in your office at this point in time, I'm good with that. But my question is, she falls under our employment, but if she's working under someone else that supervises her that is not part of the county, what is the grievance process? If there's an issue, what is you've got a real problem, I think, because you've got a boss we don't have any control over.
Well, in my mind, if there is an issue, then
We can't fix that issue.
well, but then her job assignment as county attorney liaison to the Commonwealth Attorney, we withdraw that, and she works directly under the county attorney's direct supervision at all times.
So what happens if, I'm just trying to play out scenarios here because we have no control over the Commonwealth Attorney. And if we're putting an employee under her basically care and employment, or not employment, but supervisory scenario, would it not benefit us to have some type of contract in place with, I have real questions of placing a county employee under the supervisory role of someone else besides being directly under someone working for the county.
Well, but wouldn't there be a dual reporting relationship? I mean, I know that they're reporting to Sharon Muse, but it's still your position, Rand. So, is there a dual reporting relationship to some extent?
Here, let me give you a great example.
Yeah.
What if she has to call in sick?
She calls Rand and she calls Sharon.
But she doesn't report to Sharon.
Well,
So
I'm just saying out of courtesy.
Out of courtesy, yes, but what I'm saying is, if the person that she's, and this is not a Sharon thing, this is a whoever is in that office.
Yeah.
If she's not working under them as their employee, then they have no say-so of whether, when she takes vacation, when she does, they have no say-so on any of that. And who does she report to if she's having an HR issue with their folks because they don't report to you or anyone in this room?
The way to solve this is, do you have office space in the county attorney's office?
I don't want to make it difficult. I'm just trying to think this out because of the fact that we're taking one of our employees and putting them potentially under the supervision of somebody that's not affiliated with us.
But we have that precedent already set in a somewhat scenario, like where building inspection and electrical inspection are located in the same building. Jim Burgess for the city electrical or building inspection is in charge of that building, even though Don is our, the supervisor.
But he's not in charge of the employees. Those are interlocal agreements.
Well, but if there's issues with someone with the city, that scenario might already exists. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, but I think where I'm going is I'm going a little further because none of the city folks have supervisory control over the county people.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
So we've got a Commonwealth attorney that's gonna have supervisory control over one of our employees within her office.
Can we authorize the hire and develop a MOA with the Commonwealth Attorney's Office to spell out answers to those concerns?
I mean, if Mr. Mudrack is our HR professional is fine with it, and Rand's our legal professional, then I'm okay with that.
I would want to make sure that she knows that Rand is going to be the outlet for any concerns about the workplace.
Yeah, we
And
probably
of
need to
course,
sit
and
down
I'm still
and-
an outlet for her too, as any employee.
Right.
And you, I mean,
Request
those
to
are great questions. I mean, they're well founded.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think if we sit down with her, and we can make a spot for her in our office. But yeah, we probably do need to set it out in writing, how all that stuff works, because you're right. Those things could happen. I mean, obviously they do over time.
So, of course, Jeff's made the recommendation. So a motion would be to accept Jeff's recommendation contingent upon the development of a MOA and between the county attorney and the Commonwealth attorney. And I trust Rand
Right.
to do that.
Well, and now obviously in conjunction with Jeff, we'll,
But what I'm saying is, we don't have to bring that back to the court for consideration. We're authorizing Rand to put that together.
Yeah, I make that motion.
We have a motion. Is there a second? Second for Mr. Corman. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor? Mr. Hostetler.
I do have a comment, or a couple of them. I appreciate what David bringing that up, and because it doesn't matter who's in the Commonwealth Attorney's office, or even if that matter in the county attorney's office going forward. It's all about crossing the T's and dotting the I's. But with that said, I agree with Rand that we should be able to work this out. I'm pretty confident in that. But I did take opportunity to call Ms. Muse, and I got to tell you that, and we all heard her presence speak, back in January or February, I think it was, pre-COVID, but she was elated that that Rand and you, Judge, had kind of brought this up and came up with this idea. And she got to sharing some statistics, and I wanted to share them with the court. She told me that in June alone, she indicted 82 indictments. That's 82 cases. And she said currently right now, she's working on 4 murder trials in process, and I'm sure Rand's aware of all of this, because involved 2 attempted murder. She's working on 12, that's working on right now, 12 child rape cases. Some of them go back, one of them goes back 11 years. It's been on the books that long, just didn't have the manpower. But she says that this one individual will help all of this tremendously. But we heard most of these statistics back when she presented it to the court. So I'm in favor of this, with the second. But I just wanted to share her thoughts. I talked to her just a little while before we opened the meeting. She was still working on cases. So I'm sure it's going to be a big help. And then you also mentioned that really she's also this lady to be a liaison as well with the county attorney's office and Commons. Is that correct?
yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
That's it. Thanks, Jeff.
Any other question or comment? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Next, I'm going to ask Mr. Mudrack to address custodial temporary new hire at the county attorney's office.
Yeah, this was as Rand knows, we had a employee pass away, and as everybody probably knows, unfortunately. And so that's left a need for some custodial support. We were able to, and also what has happened is the people who were cleaning the building, Terry Neal and Robert Neal, were no longer able to continue doing that because of commitments to their full-time jobs. So through them, they gave us a lead as somebody who would be interested in picking up these minimal number of hours, like about 2 hours a day during the work week, to help us out during that period. Finding a temporary employee through a temp agency is it's just not practical to attempt that. So we were lucky that we were able to find a young lady named Tina King to help us with that, and she started on Tuesday, so I'm guessing she's over there right now, probably still.
Probably,
possibly.
yeah. I don't think she was there when I left, but she probably is now.
And is helping take care of the cleaning, and if you walk around, there's a lot of carpet and towel and things that needs to be cleaned.
We're a messy bunch.
Yeah, so anyhow, she seemed to embrace the challenge and is willing to help us out here for 5 or 6 weeks until we fill the position on a full-time basis. So, yeah.
Is there a second? Second from Mr. Lyons. Any other question or comment? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Motorak.
So Jeff, you're going to be looking for a full-time custodian or a part-time custodian?
Full-time.
Okay.
And honestly, 2 full-time.
Okay. I might know somebody.
Well,
I'll send them
we've
your
got it posted. Please encourage them to apply. It depends upon, now that we have the new scale, it depends upon
The
the
opening's
qualifications.
posted on the website.
Yeah.
You interested?
No, I'm gonna try to beat it.
I might be trying to.
They
I
were
might
not
be
gonna
trying to
discuss it with
steal. We might be trying to steal from you, Mr. Ellison.
You seeing all these Scott County?
Sounds like you got 2 bosses right now.
Yeah.
Hey.
Got one.
Thank you, Jeff.
Do you want me to keep going? We have another thing on the agenda.
Oh, we do. Animal control. I'm sorry.
Well, and I normally share resumes and things with you ahead of time, but in this case, unfortunately, I didn't have it. I kind of give you a heads up that it was coming, but we do have 2 candidates that we would like to present to you for recommendations for the 2 animal control positions we have vacant. If we fill these 2, we'll be staffed at 100% in the animal shelter. Some of these vacancies go back to March, and one of them, especially since March, and they didn't refill that because of all the COVID-19 things. So there's definitely been some salary savings there. But anyhow, the 2 individuals we have to present, one is Sandra Hall. She is currently an animal control officer in Fayette County. She's been working there for 3 years and 3 months.
What's her first name?
Sandra Hall is her name. And for the last year and 8 months, she's been an officer, but she's been working with that department for the last 3 years and 3 months. So also, she's a referral from a current employee too that also worked there. So that's been a nice recommendation for us to at least to be able to consider her for the position. And then and once again, because of the search processes with the applicant tracking system, we're casting a wider net, and I think we're definitely getting good qualified people for positions. So in her case, given her experience and things, she would start at $13.89 an hour, and her hire date, the tentative hire date is September 14th. Now, I need to still finish up reference checks and get background checks and things done, but pending those all go well, then we'll be moving forward. So the second person, if you want me to just go ahead and package these 2 together, if that's okay. Second one is Kyle Delamar. He has been working at UK for about 5 years. He's been a security officer. Another highly qualified candidate for this position. Doesn't have the animal control officer experience, but definitely has some good security experience that he'll bring to the position. So his pay, since he doesn't have the animal control experience, would be $13.57 an hour. Same tentative start date, September the 14th.
Are all his background checks and everything finished?
His background check is finished, but I'm still trying to get the reference check finished on this one too. Yeah.
Both are full-time, right?
Both are full-time, that's correct.
So the motion would be to accept as presented with the background check and references confirmed.
Right.
Motion from Mr. Livingston. Is there a second? Second from Mr. Ellison. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Jeff, you might as well stay right there, and because you and Mike might have to speak, but I'm going to bring up here new business, email that I sent out related to EMA. We started talking about this in April, and just to be honest, I let it lay, and we had a variety of other items, and had some conversations, but just didn't feel like I had 100% direction. But at this time, just over the last few weeks, we've had staff, EMA staff, that have been very instrumental in helping work like 3 or 4 wrecks on the interstate. And, that staff has been out there for a prolonged time. In conversations with Sheriff Hampton shares that, and Gerald is on the line, and I'm going to ask Gerald, Captain Porter, to share, but Sheriff Hampton and Gerald can confirm that having this staff on these type of situations allows the sheriff's office deputies to take calls in other parts of the county. And Gerald, could you share with us your thoughts about the situation?
Yes, Judge. Just want to make sure you guys can hear me. I'm still not great at this Zoom meeting thing. But anyway, okay, good. Yeah, we, as the judge sent out in the email, the volunteers that work for EMA at this point have, for the last couple of years, really have been invaluable to us when it comes to road closures or getting out different kinds of information when it comes to different critical type scenes that we're working. Just the latest example, the last fatality we had on Interstate 64 westbound actually was in Woodford County, just across the bridge. But we had the road closed, at the 69 mile marker, which is the Georgetown exit, and getting people rerouted. EMA volunteers actually worked that scene for 5 or 6 hours, standing by, directing that traffic, and with the road closure. Again, that allowed us, like you said, to free up multiple deputies to respond to other calls. And again, over the last few years, I don't know if it's Mike's recruiting or what it is, but the volunteers have been extremely helpful to us over the last few years. Again, just for those types of incidents. And I think it would be more than beneficial and right at this point to say that some of those people should be getting paid for their time that they're setting out there and responding to us, when oftentimes we don't even have to call them. I'm again not sure if Mike is the one that's contacting them or how they're getting the information, but oftentimes it seems they just show up and start asking for help, what they can do. And again, I don't see any reason at this point why, whether we institute a thing of several part-time people, if it goes back to the way we did volunteer firemen when they got paid for calls that they responded to, whatever. But I do think it's just the right thing to do, that some of these people should be getting paid for the work that they're putting in to assist all agencies in the county, but especially ours when it comes to these types of scenes.
Hey, Captain Porter, thank you. And if you'd hang on, there might be another question or such.
Yeah.
But thanks for taking your time to share with the court tonight. And then, as I shared in the email, I think it would be wise to outline how many part-time staff would be designated, how many we designate eligible to be in that status. And then the other piece is that, that we limit their time that they can be called into paid service for, road accidents, what I laid out in that email, natural disasters, environmental spills, search and rescue. Am I leaving anything else off, Mike? Training that Mike and I would, collaborate on, and Mike would lay out what training he needs. And of course, if some of the training might not be paid, but some of it might be. But Jeff had shared. Mike, would you like to share anything else about what we've talked about there?
Only from the point of view that we currently have a staff of 2 full-time people and 10 volunteers. I would recommend converting all 10 volunteers to the part-time status. I don't think it's fair that one person should be out there making an hourly wage while another person is limited. I've done time studies for the last 5 years, and we're averaging 1,200 to 1,300 hours of volunteer time per year. So, if I convert that to an hourly rate for the entire staff, I'm still well under my budget of $17,000.
And Jeff had shared an email. Jeff, could you share with us as well? Because we're going to have to make a recommendation on what we pay him per hour.
Yeah.
And you had done some calculations as well related to that.
Well, given what Mike just said too, I just did a calculation based upon $13 an hour, and if $1,300 of that $17,000 is devoted towards FICA, which you have to start paying, then you have $15,700 left. At $13 an hour, that leaves you with funds for 1,200 hours of work.
So, it'd be dependent upon Mike to keep it. The budget's not going to change. And Alvin, what comment do you have?
Just a comment, Captain Porter said they showed up at the interstate rack, but there's gotta be a formal process to call in the one you need, and not just have everybody show up and expect to get paid.
Yeah, there absolutely is a process. Captain Porter is right that his deputies are not aware of the underlying process that,
So you'd make an assessment based on the situation,
Right.
and you'd say, "Hey, I need 3 volunteers
Yeah.
or three part-time employees. Excuse me. I need 3 to be to dispatch out to call on it."
That's correct. And, it may be, what generally happens right now is, if, I-64 I sent out a page saying how many people are available. And the first 6 that said they were available, I need you to come with me. And at some point along the road, it became a more stable scene. Okay, I don't need 6 anymore, so I'm going to drop 2 off, send them, So right now, if I bring 6, I might as well keep 6 because it doesn't cost me anything to keep them standing on the side of the road, But, if there's an hourly rate and, other expenses, then, we start realizing necessities of, dropping them off of this one or,
Sure.
reutilizing.
Jeff, do you have something else you'd like to add or anything? Well, questions from the court.
Yeah, here's my question, and we might have already discussed this back in the spring. Why can't we make them contract laborers? Why do we have to make them part-time?
Thank you.
We're telling them where to work, where to report to work, we're providing the equipment. They're not bringing their own equipment. They're not truly independent contractors from that standpoint.
I don't think the IRS would say they're independent contractors under that scenario.
What's that?
I don't think the IRS would consider them independent
Well,
contractors.
if you look at the 20-factor IRS test, I don't think there's any way, I looked at that, I don't think there's any way that these individuals would pass that test
Yeah.
as independent contractors.
Okay, so we just don't qualify under IRS standards.
That's why we have a HR director.
Under your CAECO policy, I think are volunteers covered? Or contract labor would not be, but I'm not sure about volunteers. I don't remember if they are or not.
Well,
But
and
if
at
these
the-
folks are out there on an active scene, it's a very dangerous area. I would prefer for them to be taken care of.
and be employees, and then there's no question that they're
Right.
covered under workers' comp and things like that. I agree completely.
So the only other, Mike, you mentioned 10. Of the 10 that you have on your roster, how many of them are like you can count on there actively? Are there all 10 active, or 7 of them active and 3 maybe show up once every 3 months?
That would probably be a better ratio. I've got 4 or 5 that I know will come out on a moment's notice 24/7. Others either work out of town or for other reasons are unavailable on a regular basis. So, basically I keep 10 on the roster for 2 reasons. First, I don't have any of my people that are just unskilled. I've got a radiation technician, I've got a geologist, I've got people that bring special skills to the table.
Okay.
And my geologist is currently working in New Mexico. So, it may be 2 or 3 months before she'd be ready to come out and help again, but I still want to keep that resource in my pocket. And other people, obviously, as the process stands right now, everybody has a full-time job. Some of them have very good paying full-time jobs and are not able to leave 8 to 4 Monday through Friday.
So, you've just told me something I didn't understand a little bit about it, but I think the court still, from the feedback I've been given, the court still wants to limit to when they're being paid and paid service to those items that I mentioned in the email. Right. Is there anything else that you would add to that?
I would like to be able to go back to my office and review the calls we've done for the last year or two and send an email to the court in the next 72 hours saying, here are the things that we respond to frequently enough that it should be,
But I think there was comments made that the concern was that, we wouldn't.
There's a lot of parades on.
We wouldn't be called out for parades and.
Well, and that would be something, I could request them to come out and volunteer their time for a parade. There's a lot of latitude there.
Yeah.
My point of view is if my guy is standing right next to a police officer or sheriff deputy that's making overtime or at least regular time, what's the difference in that value of individual?
I'm just commenting on what was commented to me.
Sure.
I had one question on what you sent us was you had flooding.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in what aspect would they use? Would you use your people in flooding? Because the road department's on call. If there is, the roads are covered, they're out responding. In what aspect would they be used?
By KRS, we have to assess any 911 call for service regarding flooding. So our guys go out and determine that the road is actually covered and it's unsafe for passage. In the past, the process was we would leave our office, go over to Double Culvert and say, yeah, this road is flooded. Reach back to the 911 center, say, please call JR to bring me a sign and close the road. Right now, as long as we're out there doing these assessments, we might as well drop a sign instead of call for somebody else.
I'll make a comment, because you're working within the confines of the budget, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So, in my opinion, I would leave it up to you and your expertise and whenever you use people for whatever reason, just my opinion.
JR.
Mike is a big help on the flooding situation, because when we have a flooding situation, water comes up quick and closes numerous roads everywhere. He's got signs that says high water, road closed, we do too, and we work together on this, so he is a big help to the road department. Because if you have water, say, go over Muddy Ford Road, you gotta go from one side of the road, you might have to drive 10 miles around, and the more people you got that can cover those roads immediately, the better, and he's a big help to us.
JR, I thought I saw you in a boat one time ferrying.
I just want to make sure that there was no duplication of services and that you all are working together.
Go back to what we're saying, right? That's his window of budget. Once he reaches that point, it's his job as director stay within that budget and use his hours and his one calls people when he needs them, I mean.
Yeah, hey, I appreciate that, that thought. That would be the method that I would prefer. If you look back, the overtime for the second in command, currently captain, was deputy director. Overtime has gone down significantly in the last 18 months. I am working very hard to be frugal with our budget, and
But
go
with
ahead.
that being said, though, Rando, we would have to have some kind of policy or what we call people out for in the event something happened. The budget restraints are not what, in a lawsuit, is what's going to determine whether we're at fault or not. It would have to be, can they be called out for as an emergency situation?
I mean, if
Yeah,
he to call somebody out for any reason, could he just?
I don't see why.
But there's KRS that regulates what he can do and what he can't do.
But what Dwayne and Kelly are saying is that, there's no difference in JR calling out somebody to push snow, in my mind. And the court, the reason I put that in that email is because some of the comments that were made to me, I feel like this is a thing that needs to happen to make the position of part-time staff, EMA. I was trying to navigate concerns that was voiced to me so that the court would know that this staff's going to be, their primary focus is, service calls for wrecks, natural disasters, spills.
Right. And I think Magistrate Wallace is on the right track. There is a limited scope of service for what we can do. And, KRS says that you may do this, but you may not do that. So we're already working within those confines, and I'd be happy to share those. But, I'd like the latitude to stretch those boundaries a hair. 2 years ago, we were rocking and rolling with the sheriff deputies on snowy days. They'd have 30, 40 wrecks on I-75. If it was just a slide off into a guardrail, if the driver didn't want a report, we would clear that call. We don't need a deputy to show up, we're good. It's not within the police powers, but it's also not specifically spelled out in our mode of operation. So I'd like you to use my expertise, and if you'd like to do a 90-day reevaluation, and we go back and say, here's what we've done here. Are we all still good with the scope of service? I'm fine with that. But
Sure.
however we need to move forward.
Yeah.
My big thing is trying to get these people part-time and covered under insurance. They're driving county vehicles, they're doing the same things as county employees, and, basically risking their own skin. If somebody gets bumped with a car tonight on the interstate, we're gonna be in court for a while trying to figure out whose responsibility it is.
No, and that's why, I agree with you, and I think I think it's the right thing to do. And I was trying to address concerns that were brought to me. What other questions? Rick Hostetler?
Sir, well, you've sent us quite a bit of information. I mean, I thought one of these pages was a list of kind of duties and responsibilities. I've been through it. It covers a lot, but, I mean, it sounds to me like some of the concerns are pretty much addressed. Maybe it needs to be tweaked. I did have a question. One of the sheets you sent us was about training requirements. I was going to ask Mike, Judge, what exactly does this mean, Mike? Somebody sent in that email, Judge, there's about 15 or 18 items, training requirements. What's that? Is that something? that they'll have to get?
Go ahead, Mike.
When I recruit somebody off the street, they know in advance they've got a 36-week academy. It's not as strenuous as the police academy or fire academy, but they have to have basic search and rescue. They have hazardous materials operations level, qualified with all of our pieces of apparatus, rope rescue, high angle rescue, all the possibilities of things that they would have to be involved in. Maybe not a hands-on situation, but know what the other guys are doing so that they can operate safely as a support role. So basically, they're committing to at least 36 hours of training before we even give them a badge and a t-shirt. After that, they have to show at least 2 hours a month of in-service training and 8 hours of but in the classroom type training, not something that's part of our staff meeting or in-house training. They have to go somewhere else and get at least 8 hours of training that's not provided by the county. So it's a never-ending process, and they really strive to be as good of.
So we have 10 people that are doing that.
That's correct.
Volunteering to do it.
That's correct. Mm-hmm. And
They get stipends. They get. Mhm.
no, none of that costs, but they do not get paid for training. So if I send somebody to Cincinnati for an 8-hour class, I'll provide them the vehicle and a meal, but they wouldn't get paid on the hour, and I don't plan to change that.
Any other questions?
They're doing that now, right?
That's correct, yes.
Volunteer.
Right.
Thank you.
Mr. Livingston.
You just said something that caught my interest. You said that if they have to go to training, you wouldn't change your program right now and pay them.
We don't have that option.
Pay them?
I mean, Jeff Mudrack would say yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
But all your 10 people are trained right now.
Right. And
Is there continuing ed training that they have to go through to maintain, or?
Not required. The only people required by KRS is Regina and myself.
Okay.
Yeah, I have to have 40 hours a year. She has to have 16. But everybody else is just at my discretion. I set a minimum of 8 hours classroom time per year and all of the trainings that are part of our in-service.
Do any of these people have other jobs where this is part of their job, where they need to get this training in-house as part of that job, by any chance, Mike?
Yes, there
Who's on first?
Yeah.
Because that would be easier for them to get the training that way than it just is secondary to them working with us.
And yes, we've been very flexible with that. I've got the assistant plant manager from Adient who's always worrying about some sort of hazardous materials. So, he would get that 8 hours easily.
Okay.
I would say we probably would have paid training for 3 or 4 people per year, and that's.
Okay. What other questions or comments does anybody have? And does anyone want to entertain some type of motion in regards to creating a part-time EMA staff position?
Position or positions?
Well,
Why used to be one, and then how many were, well?
how do we need to navigate that?
I think what I'm hearing you say is that it is one position title. You're hiring 10 people on a part-time basis for that position title, right?
Right.
So if you're limiting it to 10, people at one position, then that
Right.
is what you want to do.
That's correct.
Kind of like a part-time
10.
firefighter
Yeah.
and part-time jailer.
We don't really.
10 per diem part-time
If
employees.
you'd like to limit it to 10, then you can do that, but.
Well,
With the jail and with,
Yeah, up to
firefighters,
10.
we don't have a limit on the number of part-timers. It's just based upon the budget.
But the budget still is the budget is the budget.
That's right.
And it's Mike's responsibility as the director, and I have full confidence that Mike will watch his dollars So,
And you're saying that that's created under what you sent us as far as what is a part-time emergency response officer and all of everything that's laid out?
I would like to know what's, what we need to call it exactly.
Well, that's what you sent us.
Yeah.
But it does give
EMA
some flex.
officers.
It's called part-time emergency response officer. That's
I
what-
would go with that.
Yeah.
That'd be my recommendation.
The one thing it does say in there, and I think that it does give Mike some flexibility because he's gonna need it. There's gonna be things that we don't, to imagine it's gonna happen.
Right, and I would like to add one more thing, because he just brought it but to mind. If we have a declared natural disaster, I may be having these people work a whole lot more than 100 hours per month. And, I'll work out the average so that we don't get into trouble with retirement and such. But
That might be a necessity, but then.
It'd be a
But
necessity.
then that funding kicks in.
That's what I was going to say. It would be FEMA reimbursable, so that, if I overran my budget, it would be because I knew that I was going to get the money back
Sure.
from somewhere else.
Where this list, the responsibilities they have, it says but not limited to, so these are kind of open-ended.
Yeah. Mhm.
So is there a motion to create the position of part-time emergency response officer?
I make that motion.
A motion,
I'll say.
a second.
Rand, do I need to put anything, create the position, but I don't need to put a quantity?
Well, I think up to 10 is what we're talking about,
Yeah.
right?
So it's-
And at $13 an hour, is that what it is, Mike?
I'd be more comfortable at 12 an hour.
12,
so that
okay.
I've got a little bit of stretch
Okay.
here or there. But yeah, up to 10, and then perhaps we
So
can.
so the motion should be create the position up to 10 part-time emergency response officers at a rate of $12 an hour. So
That's my motion.
that's a motion, and that's, Mr. Ellison, is that your second? Any other question or comment? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
I'm not opposed, I just was gonna ask a question.
Okay, and I'm sorry, Mr. Livingston, question?
Are we done?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and then now they'll have to complete applications, background checks, do we do that now with part-timers, or?
I-
Yes, it's now.
Okay,
So, yeah, we'll have to go through, they just need to be on payroll and
Right.
all normal paperwork, they're a normal employee.
They've already done all the training, they've already,
Right. I've got background checks on file,
Okay.
KSP background checks for all of
Which is
them.
why I was gonna be, I'd be shocked if there was.
Yeah.
but this protects these individuals who are working, in my mind, for the county and
There's the county too.
protects the county too. No, so Mike, any other comment?
No, I don't believe so. I thank you all for.
No,
your-
we thank you all. And, at the next workshop, I'll be bringing Mike back, and Mike's going to help bring the cold weather shelter topic back up. That's not gone away, and it's going to get colder quicker than we think. And we've got to, in my mind, I'd like to consider that.
I just one quick statement that with the removal of the moratorium on rent and mortgages and such, I'm afraid we're going to see an awful lot of people suddenly become homeless, just as it's starting to get cold. So-
Yeah. Well, I can't agree with you more. It's a concern as well, so. Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Jeff. And thanks to the court. J.R. Brandenburg, can you come and share with me what you shared, will you share this with the court, about Hinton Sadieville?
Thank you, Judge Magistrates. Back the last week of May, we had several heavy rainfalls, washed the road out on Hinton Sadieville Road, section of it. At that time, found out that there was not a lot of money in the pool of emergency funding, so we waited till after the 1st of July, and that gave us time to get estimates. $120,000 was the estimate to repair it. Applied for it through rural and municipal aid, and just this week, they finally got around to start processing it. Got an email that we'd been approved for it, so that's good news.
JR, that's great news, and it's on the 80/20 in that area.
We should get roughly $96,000.
So, I just, JR really,
It is probably 65% complete. Yes, they have been working on it.
and then JR, I talked to Kelly Baker, and I shared with the court, Kelly shared an email, text message. I inquired about the last leg of the bypass. You might have talked with staff out there working, but what was shared with me is their target is end October,
Yes.
November, to open up that last leg.
And within the next 2 weeks, the paving crew is scheduled to hit it and start paving and get
Okay.
it opened up.
Anything else you want to share with the court? Any questions for JR? Yes, sir.
I do want to say that the gravel out there at Great Crossing has helped tremendously, but we still have issues. I mean, I almost think that going forward after this fall of finishing the entire lot gravel, because I went out there and.
He saw it, he was there.
Okay.
Now, JR and I've already kind of
Yes.
discussed, and JR thinks he has a source to move this and really get it exactly what you just said,
Yes.
done this fall, maybe.
I'm gonna look at the numbers, should be through with the repaving and everything. Shouldn't be an issue of getting another few $1,000s worth of gravel and
And what would be neat out there, and I don't know if this causes more work, I'm just thinking about this when I went out there, is if we had like like they have on Paris Pike in Bourbon County, along the roads, the guardrails, the wood guardrails.
So,
Mr. Tevis is in, on top of that.
you've been reading my emails?
I have not.
Yes.
So, I've been out there twice, and as you pull in down the avenue and the fields are on the left, I would like on the left side first, just like at a national park or along Paris Pike, a post and then a 2x10 that's no higher than 2 or 3, 2 feet off the ground, but it keeps that people from pulling onto that ground, and it keeps it looking nice, and it's a minimal cost. And JR and Tim and I have talked about getting that installed this fall when things slow down. So you got to stay on my
Man, y'all are
email.
brilliant.
Maybe the EMA volunteers can, or part-timers can go down there and dig holes.
Along with that, I did talk with Kelly Baker this week. The repaving that was supposed to be done in last fiscal year on rural secondary roads, which they have postponed
Till next spring.
till next spring, as well as the repaving for the fiscal year, which the court approved, or it'll probably be next spring, hopefully. I believe that's the road in Alvin's district and one in my district, I believe, so.
And JR, when do you start turning your head towards preparation for winter? I mean, we've got plenty of salt and,
About first week of October, we'll start looking at mounting the plow spreaders, doing repairs, making sure everything's working. And by mid-November, we'll have them ready to roll.
with the light winter last year, we were blessed with a good
Yeah,
amount of salt left, so.
yeah, we got a, no, nice supply of salt. And
So,
one o-
anything else, JR?
Yeah, one other thing, this week, North 25 was just awarded a $500,000 contract for improvements under the SHIFT program, and the curve at before you get to past Harbor Village in Mallard Point, recovery works, that's gonna get redesigned, some safety improvements.
Much
all the way
needed.
from Double Culvert back to Delaplane,
Oh, wow,
which is good news for us.
absolutely.
Well, it's gonna be some shoulder repair, guardrail signage, the pitch of the curves, and, yeah.
Does anyone else have anything else? You got anything else, JR? Hey, thank you.
I got one other thing.
Mr. Wallace, JR, we always appreciate you.
This is something the court needs to start thinking about. Planning and zoning last meeting had what was called a small cell tower ordinance presented to them, which is eventually going to come to the fiscal court and to the city council. And what it means is basically you take a telephone pole, a light pole, they're going to add a pole on top of those poles about 30, 40 feet up. I was in a KCO meeting or Zoom on Tuesday, and one of the things that they said is that if there's a request for these types of poles and there is a denial by the municipal body, if it's not within the comprehensive plan that addresses where these poles are going to go, then you're going to lose in court. And for most of us, except for Dwayne, we've had to deal with these cell phone towers before, and there's little that we can do with it. So we need, if we want to start thinking in terms of this ordinance, it's probably going to take a change in the comp plan as well to lay out the comp plan on how we want small cell phone towers in our community before we adopt the ordinance, and we'll probably need to do that within conjunction with the city of Georgetown. So I just want to put that on your all's radar because it's coming. And
So what's the next step?
next step is for planning and zoning to approve the ordinance, and then they will bring it to city council and the fiscal court for approval.
So do you know what you have to do to change the comp plan?
Yeah, you'd have to bring it back through a committee process, and then eventually the planning and zoning would have to approve it, and then it would have to come.
So it'll have to be open back up.
My concern is how long does that take and how quickly could these carriers?
There's a timeline on those.
Yeah, I don't know. I'll have to talk with Joe. I've talked with him briefly. But what they told us is, I mean, we don't think about how we want our community to look. And we've got cell phone towers now, but they're going to be attached to light poles, utility poles, could be our storms, sirens, stadium lights.
Try to come to me on stadium lights.
Yeah.
And you know, it needs to, you know, when the opportunity to co-locate is available, that's, I think, what this ordinance is going to try to push. And, you know, I've had one individual reach out to me that there were 5 notices by AT&T where they were going to place poles, and one individual is very against it. It's going to be in his front yard, side yard, and I even called and asked, you know, could it not move like 30 feet, you know? And they, you know, the answer I got was that they are so, the location, to get optimum performance, it has to be located exactly where their engineers say. And, you know, so it's something that the court's going to have to look at.
And Judge, to piggyback on that, the way our comp plan reads right now encourages that. So essentially, those companies can put the poles wherever they want. And we have no jurisdiction over them. And so that's why I'm bringing that up to our attention now. So we need to think about all this, because if they're encouraging it, they can put it, and we won't have a choice.
Sure. I appreciate you bringing that to the court. Any other court member or anyone in our audience have any new business that they'd like to bring to the court? Mr. Runyon, you doing okay? All right. We're glad you're here. So without that, I have no other new business, and would entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion. Is there a second? Second. All those in favor? Aye. We are adjourned.